The Absent-Minded Performer. My best friend Julie calls me the Absent-Minded Professor. Of course she means professor, but she says it the wrong way in jest. That means in fun. Julie calls me that since I always have my head in a book. I love reading all about inventions. I like inventing things too. I don't really like getting up in front of others and speaking, though. Even though I like words, I can't always remember them. Sometimes the wrong words come out when I try to explain things. I'm really kind of shy, except with Julie. One day my teacher announced we were going to put on a class play. Miss Greer always said that we should stretch ourselves. Mr. Greer always said that we should stretch ourselves. He meant we should try to do things that we didn't usually do. I guess that was why he asked me to take a leading role in the play. Gulp. I ground inside when he asked me. I did not want to disappoint him, so I agreed to take the part. Even before I knew anything about my part, I began to fret about learning the lines. Mr. Greer told Julie she would be the stage manager. Her job was to make sure everything ran smoothly during the play. The only thing that made me feel better about getting up in front of a crowd was teasing Julie about being stage manager. Poor Julie was always disorganized. She lost stuff. She was all thumbs when it comes to machines and fixing things. Julie was not happy about her job for the play either. However, she liked to see the good side of things. What's the worst that could happen? She asked. The curtain won't come down when it's supposed to. The play was about President Abe Lincoln and the Civil War. I was Abe, so I had a lot of lines, including the Gettysburg Address. Don't worry, Mr. Greer assured me. I wouldn't have given you the part if I didn't know you could handle it. I was only 4 feet tall. The first thing I would need to play Abe Lincoln was a good pair of stilts. I poked around in my closet and found some items that I could use to make a pair of stilts. I hoped the stilts would make me look more presidential. Then Mom helped make some pants that would cover them. I spent the next couple of weeks practicing with the stilts. Partly, I really wanted to get good at walking with them. Partly, I was avoiding learning my lines. Finally, Julie sat me down. It's time to learn your lines, she said. I'll help you. Yeah, I'll help you be the stage manager, I said. Why can't we just switch? Mr. Greer says we have to stretch ourselves, she reminded me. For the next 2 weeks, I tried to learn my lines. I read them to my family at dinner. I taped them to the mirror over the bathroom sink. Then I read them out loud when I brushed my teeth. I read them to my dog when I took her for a walk. Julie made me practice my lines at lunch and recess. Still, the words just wouldn't stay in my brain. So he would say, so here are some of his lines. Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. And the world will little note nor long remember what we say here. Finally, Julie said, you're so good at inventing things. Why don't you invent something that will help you with your lines if you get stuck. I decided to take Julie's advice. I poked around my room to find just what I needed. When I was done, just having my invention made me feel much better. Still, on the day of the play, I was nervous. When the curtains opened, I was supposed to stride onto the stage and begin my first speech. My stilt feet felt glued to the floor. Mr. Greer nudged me. I stepped onto the stage and cleared my throat. As soon as I made my appearance, there was quite a ruckus. Everyone laughed at my outlandish costume. I was easily as tall as the real Abe Lincoln. I had a fake black beard glued to my chin. The most important prop I had was my hat. I had written my lines on a strip of paper in teeny tiny writing. After I wrote the lines, I wound the paper around two straws like a scroll. I fixed the scroll onto the brim of my hat so that I would turn it to see my lines. That way I didn't have to worry about forgetting my lines. Everything was going pretty well. The other actors were doing a fine job. I knew most of my lines, and for those I didn't. I knew most of my lines, and for those I didn't, my gadget worked like a charm. If I forgot what I was supposed to say, I casually looked up at the scroll for help. The other actors were pretty patient with me, and it actually enhanced my performance as I looked just like Abe Lincoln, carefully choosing each word he would say next. Then disaster struck. At the end of the second act, just as I had feared, the curtain was supposed to come down at a dramatic point, but it didn't. I was all alone, struck out there on stage. I had nothing to say and nowhere to go. The audience just stared at me, waiting for something to happen. I knew I had to do something. I decided I would have to repeat the Gettysburg Address one more time. At least I'd learned this part by heart. I caught Julie's eye. She looked panicked as she tried to get the curtains to come down. I could see that the curtain was stuck above my head, so I took my hat off and started to swing it over my head with a grand gesture. Four score, swing. And 7 years ago, swing. Our forefathers said swing. Since I was already so tall, I was able to smack the struck part of the curtain with my hat right at the end of my Gettysburg speech. The curtain fell down almost on top of me. I looked over at Julie and gave her an okay sign. Then the other actors all filed out on stage and took a bow with me. Julie came out on stage and took a bow too. The audience thought we were all great and clapped for a long time. A little later, after I had changed out of my costume, I went back to the classroom. There I was greeted by the other kids who gave me a standing ovation. Julie held her eyeglass case up to her mouth like a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce George Liu, the absent-minded performer. He had big shoes and a big hat to fill, and he filled them beautifully, she proclaimed. With your help, I said. Anyway, the world will little note nor remember what we say here. I quoted Abraham Lincoln's words from the Gettysburg Address. Well said, George, Julie, and Mr. Greer said Miss Julie and Mr. Greer at the same time. The end.